Hello, America. Hello, YouTubers. Hello, world. Hello, boys and girls. Ladies and gentlemen. This video is serious because it's regarding Megyn Kelly, for example, thinks that she doesn't realize that the FBI, her sources with the FBI and other police forms that are involved with that, including private sources, there are conjunctions between databases and information. There is data reception, is evidence reception, and is identity reception, racketeering, worse than war crimes. Since founding, that's what slavery is about. That's what uses of color are about, and that's how it's going to be taught. I am not a lawyer. The lawyers are recorded, also involved replacing actually recorded audio and video, and using crime methods where they left out and leave out exceptions to the readings of the law. In other words, so they don't have the right to contribute to wire crime acts and methods that force the people to speak with the people around them about things that weren't even present. And while they're attaching me and everyone around me and everyone around you guys and to fake words, including people that were in the me and other people were in the World Trade Center context right before the attack, not in the World Trade Center, but right next to it in the Ninth Circuit Court, right before the attack. And post-dated after the attack, it was proven papers that had been brought to the court on time and time-stamped, timely handed into the court, the Ninth Circuit Court. Someone from inside the court post-dated the papers to make them appear late to the Ninth Circuit Court. So all this time had to prove that was proven. And that led up to a 2006 district court case, but now in Connecticut. It had been part of other cases, had been in Manhattan and Washington too, no. Because these are also people on off the campuses with influences over Megyn Kelly's sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, and Whoopi Goldberg's, for example, where and how they've been making opinions and convictions, which is their right, and with physical delusions, which is their business. But also, they've been preventing mandated law, though. There's a man named Joshua Stryker who's involved with I never had a verbal conversation in my life. They tried to pretend other with Eric Oliveri, where they were planting evidences, making all confessions as strangers, people involved on off the Connecticut State Judicial Branch offices. That's the first house. There's spots in like Glastonbury / East Hartford. And right over that bridge, I believe it's called the Putnam Bridge, on Route 3, which goes right by the State Judicial Branch offices. Like one of the first houses, I don't know if it still is, but reportedly an Oliveri house, involved with orchestrating crimes with data reception, evidence reception, and identity reception, and the value of sequence reception, and the value of what is simultaneous perception as strangers, also with overt, complete strangers that have been coordinating this intercities, and there have been uses of it by other people, and there are uses of it by them distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. One of the things it is commonly is an identity theft, fraud, slander method roles. And so they force people to speak through others. So, for example, when and how Megyn Kelly and other women in the news media locations where they make opinions about bullying, when they make reactions to bullying as victims, when they're using it as a premise, and when they're using it as a whole bunch of premises, pretending it's, they're leaving out a whole bunch of ways sequence shifts are differentially more critical, where and how they are preventing offensively the proper responses to things. Because and they're painting arrays of liars who are pretending to be other about the truth, increasingly self-valuing how criminal insidiousness. That phrase has not been used, and other has been used with physical and with criminally foreign influence defenses of how that stays the outcome. The people behind that logic have physical delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence premises treatment, fact-cheaping nature, qualities, and aspects. And so we have to be this quality of fact-cheaping nature capable of countering the natures of criminal insidiousness, bound and then used that way, bound individually, grouped and together. Blaming other things, others, ourselves, while nature keeps increasingly demonstrating it. No one spoke for the law. They keep valuing. Now they have to paint it up. Quick, we'll do something. We'll let the laws go in New York City. Let everyone hurt each other. It's either that A or B. Keep out exceptions. How exceptions, in other words, because they're doing way, way worse crimes than people of New York City. Now they have all these, as per reported, the people of Chicago, for example, as reported, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. See, their influence tricked for her persuaded by the F.B.I. and by other agencies, men and women, sickly distinctly, critically incapable of speaking for women or men, and properly, because we are distinctly as nature too, to see how non-distinctly. In other words, so Megyn Kelly and Whoopi Goldberg, when they use passions and emotions, then they have to defend that, and those defenses require, as styles, against nature, to the value of what is simultaneous, the value of exceptions, the value of a quality of fact-keeping nature that can't be afforded for little time slots in the media, for the time treatments in courts that have been switching and forging names to pretend they have integrity, increasingly self-valuing the streams into courts and the chaos where they can't afford time, any excuse to not to be able to, increasingly self-valuing that haven't been. Those places are kept needing to hide the same lie progressions, find active progressive lies, use remote uses of identity around locations. So they invested themselves with all kinds of crimes with cases. There's a Whiting forensics place in Connecticut. So the Wethersfield police and the state police and the F.B.I. and other agencies and military police, they have roles with courts too, and the courts police and private ones, and with interbranch family members who've been planting data crimes, evidence crime roles, and identity reception crime roles. For example, the phrase, treatments of the phrase critical race theory is recorded also, being like with Trump supporters. When you try to use fake news, predicate acts are real. When you try to tell on them, they pretend you're a Trump supporter. To pretend like that kind of nature of logic is offensively preventing people from reporting like things that were recorded and confessed, demonstrated by Rob Rodriguez, a whole bunch of people tied to him I had nothing to do with, and the other ones they're trying to make exceptions. And so these are Wethersfield police that use little kids in my area through time. They got stuck. They painted themselves in the corners. Now they're pretending passions and emotions. They can't go be honest about that. They've been using the right to lie. Quote James Comey, some guy with the Congress, criminally involved with the sequence shift self-value. That's evidence. That's significant evidence. It's increasingly valuable evidence. And that so Connecticut News attached me and my family to fake words about the 9/11 and they attached me and my family to fake natures of ties to people with the World Trade Center, and with all kinds of abuses of little boys and girls when they were kids. Then they make confessions about it when they're older, and they left out how they were involved with other natures of federal crimes and roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and instances, and then how that was timed where they needed to hide lie progressions and lie about their natures of relationships with me in the future. So a whole bunch of people on off Church Street are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a Mr. Neville and people with the Southstein Middle School through time. I never saw Heather Hansen on the Southstein Middle School campus ever in my life. I never saw her boyfriend that was in the one that was put in a summer school class with me with her, Joe DeMoro, on my middle school campus in my life. I never saw Ray Clough on my middle school campus in my life. There was one exception one day, real quick, with Joe DeMoro, with Eric Mendez. And I barely know the Joe DeMoro. And he made one of the only times I knew he was making confessions about Eric Mendez, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with people with juxtaposed natures of organized crime with the kids and uses of that, and uses of everyone with other motivations, natures, needs, interests, and that being having been relevant to and hyper relevant to, as we'll see, is needed to be discerned distinctly to those fact treatments by what is black, and where and how that is in our fact treatment nature, with that breaching method having been associated with it other than natural, specifically to keep that claim natural with its criminal insidiousness, with nature increasingly demonstrating it. It cannot be natural that is also positive to itself. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. Criminal insidiousness, natures of wealth with that. That was forced, roles with that were forced, because that's part of the method that would figure out who was involved, breaking the nature of grip over the syntax nature of everyone, the positive and negative treatments simultaneously, which are identity treatments now. So Fox Connecticut News has roles with, I believe it's a Chris White, pretended to know me with a Jennifer Socia and Jim Socia, people associated with Central Connecticut State University, involved with some Adela Fair family, with probate judges, and with Spada family, and her neighbors involved with a Phil Cololo, who's been pretending me tied to him behind my back with lawyers using the right to lie for identity thefts and frauds roles. They have crimes with child sex offenders and drugs and medicine crimes, with doctors and with Wethersfield Police, Mendez brothers, fabricating police reports, also with the police forms associated with it as Kevin Dillon and Anna Dillon / Annie Dillon. Their roles with courts, prosecutors, and judges personally criminally involved with predicate acts, delivery system methods, uses of real estate companies, uses of their influences over people, then through time too, which was timed, intercities, a whole bunch of people at Trinity College associated with Joshua Straker. Please have Miss Burgess Sweeney give me a response for the Joshua Straker non-verbally confirmed confessions through time from strangers tied to him. I never had anything to do with him. They were planting evidences to try to make fake exceptions. That's why they were making people make all these confessions. They had bombs, and then making confessions about the UPS drug dealership with his father that runs it, or family that runs it. And then there's extended families and the mother. I don't know, people that are involved with Facebook, with pages in the police forums. Then when they get caught, intercities, they keep playing stupid and wasting the time and pretending that they could just waste enough time and it doesn't count. So they keep fabricating. They fabricated a whole bunch of police reports. You know how easy it is to make problems between kids and then make falsified police reports and then exploit that. And then they're playing stupid when they say, "Oh, well, look, he had all these arrests." They have roles with men and women, keeping the outcome since founding blamed on other things, others themselves. The real cause of negative value needs to progress vaccinations most overtly / insidiously at New York City, and how there is self-valued uses of both how overtly, distinctly from how insidiously is also value. We have to deal with the invisible but discernible correctly. In other words, bullying is invisible but still discernible, because it's physical. So Megyn Kelly brought up a woman who's making, she brought up a story that a school called her, so she's not there. And she said that someone was bullying someone else. And so her brother or her son son jumped in. Those are people involved with lying about the nature of the relationships between the kids. And as behavior psychopaths with their opinions, convictions, criminally foreign influence, and with delusions, and regarding their roles with violence, and regarding their roles with remote uses of Black family members, interbranch, and the ones, exceptions nature tied to them, and the ones that are not, and simultaneously, as their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with those punk trick methods, with a whole bunch of people tied to Mike Roberts, involved with police forms interstates through time, criminally foreign influence. Nothing personal against Mike Roberts. He was a victim predator since he was a kid. They're making kids have to use other people's names. If you don't use other names, they either way. And if you just say silent, they put fake things in databases anyway. Humanity pray. So these are people involved with the confessions of a guy who said his name is Sullivan with Wethersfield Police, and then they confessed they only have a woman with the name Sullivan, but was one of their officers. These are officers. A whole bunch of different officers used the name McGee. One of them was involved on off Rock Hill High School, and with kids with the Wethersfield parks through time, and locations next to the parks, involved with a crime method where they lie, where they make little boys and girls speak through each other. And they lie about who was coming up to what spot, because they're lying about the nature of the relationship between people. They're painting and having painted arrays where they have fake sides and fake middles, and all those people are in collusion with sequence shifts. Identity theft, fraud, slanders. One of the things that is shared commonly were all locations of where human identity of volume is, A through Z. They are tactically denatured. Bases and identity of the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, to distinctly, not distinctly and simultaneously denatured. And the value of that, tactically denatured, tactical ulterior from where and how there are actual nature syntax ties to our syntax. See, but where it applies through this filter, in other words, there's a conflict between these people. So it's either you're helping with it, it's good towards that instance. They're planting evidences. They're planting evidences with people on off the state judicial branch offices since I was a kid. Then leading up to the World Trade Center and since, all along where town 2 Royal Highway goes into Hang Dog Lane. A whole bunch of people that I don't know at all sought me out with brief instances to make confessions and demonstration of their roles with sequence shifts. They didn't say that like that. We have roles with sequence shifts. In other words, that was one of the things why they were making confessions after they graduated. And one of them it was to pretend I knew him, but and with the people tied to them. I never seen Brian Bowen around Ray Clow in my life, but he confirmed roles with various natures of fact-cheating nature, evidence crimes with some judges and prosecutors and with this Dillon family and other neighbors of his involved with identity theft, frauds, wire crime, falsified police reports, drugs, medicines, crimes, as the ones that do that legally. So these are people involved with plainclothes police, and plausibly some of their acting teachers for that, because they have two acting teachers from Central Connecticut State University involved with the corner of Church Street and Main Street with the Weathersfield Police, and with the private and standing interbranch with Connecticut News, NBC Connecticut News, WFSB, and Fox Connecticut News. The location next to Fox Connecticut News has people involved. So in other words, there's a Sandra Spada and Alessandra Spada too. Oh no, I think it's the same. And Antonetta Spada. And they have like one or two other sisters and a brother I never met. And I never met one of the sisters. And one of the sisters lives in Newington near Dearborn Street. Now this is right on, which is with Eric Jensen family involved with state police, and with other people associated with the media with uses of the name marijuana or something like that, and a reported arrest of that. So these are people involved with my neighbors, where they made instances where I met people through him, and I had nothing to do with them. Then you know what I'm saying, you say you know them, but they were planting evidences. They were influenced, so they will tell you that. The only reason I'm using anyone's name is because they replaced what was actually recorded. Someone brought up how he was influenced to pretend to know me. He was timed, involved with other people's confessions. He was like, they were I mastered what they do. And so he parked and he was pretending he's going fishing. And he's just walking by me because there used to be fish near me. And with a girl I never met him, never had a conversation with him. And I never saw him on campus in my life. Only exception is like on a baseball field, maybe when I was T-ball. He was on my T-ball team. And there was one exception on Route 3. There are places on Route 3 involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders through time that have connections between themselves through the uses of them, though. And their uses are other than what I'm talking about. Their motivations, apparent and actual, are other than what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about uses of them. Actual, where they realize too, because they're using everybody remotely. So that's why I'm bringing up names. The courts and the police forms pretend we're bringing up names for fake reasons, and that they're lying about their motivations when they say we're bringing up their names, and they have physical delusions at the same time. So that they're lying about the actual quality of their nature and of their responses to our emotions too. So they can't afford natural function by emotions, which is to help show what is actually the value of that is simultaneous. That which actually could be sensed. So bullying, they have people using bullying as a premise to leave out sequence truth. Plus, if you're saying, okay, bullying is natural, that's just going to happen, you're saying the rules aren't going to be followed. And that the same people that do that pretend that the rules are followed for their kids offensively because they're planting evidence at the locations. They're leaving out exception nature. That's why we have to they have a crime method of the police forms from off the media locations associated. In other words, the F.B.I. former director of the F.B.I. and F.B.I. under him, he used remotely. He didn't have the right to do that. So where we could sue the F.B.I. and where the Attorney General is obligated to take down the F.B.I., which is incapable of being taken down because they don't know how to do it, because there are a whole bunch of little jobs, little types of, okay, well, this is how we counter the negative. They were in collusion with the negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. You think it's a phenomenon? They just have all these types of dumb experts, dishonest experts. That's what American people know. When we hear people lying with their emotions, especially regarding politics, oh, well, that's why you have to vote. There's collusion. mandated law doesn't say, okay, you can only vote for freedom. In other words, you're leaving out what the people had to say as ourselves at the end of the whip. They're still teaching that George Washington owned slaves. George Washington said he wanted the Constitution unabridged and the identity theft, fraud, slanders against them off. He could tell no lies. And you see his identity. All right. All right. The trial tribes. You just have to follow mandated law. And, you have to know how they interbranch offensively pretend passions and emotions. And they prevent us calm means to defend ourselves. And then when they see us responding to things that have nothing to do with themselves, when they do, actually do, they jump in dishonestly. So they're painting and having painted arrays where they have opinion natures A through Z, including the branch of government, every member of each branch of government individually grouped and together, criminally foreign influenced, simultaneously delusions wrought as victims that came through campuses per this method that replaces that which is actually recorded and hyper-evidential with other ways to think than proper, using what is hyper-evidential. So switching names into branch is one of the methods they use. They have a hypersensitivity towards the campuses because they've been using it to rub off, their roles with the identity theft, fraud, slander since they were kids, with offensive data reception, evidence reception, and identity reception racketeering uses of that, which is a whole bunch of ways relevant. This is manifest at all campuses, public, private, and where it is manifest with the campuses, intra-campuses and inter-campuses. And they force people to use the names of strangers. Like a Brian Savon, whatever name he's using now, he's using a picture from a yearbook. I never met him in my life. But people involved with the fire department, with the police forms, and with the military, and with their roles with pilots, and their narratives by who's safe intellectually and not, etc. So they have a whole bunch of methods and natures of organized crime juxtaposed, and of worse, and they have types of experts that respond to such. And then they make subject treatments where they're leaving out the value of sequence true. And for example, their roles with violence, and then lying about the nature of the responses to it, and lying about the responses to it, and replacing the actually recorded with fabricated audio and video responses. So NBC Connecticut News has roles fabricating emails with Wethersfield Police, and with people on the Board of Education, and with people with Hartford Hospital, involved with Hartford campuses and West Hartford campuses and Rocky Hill campuses and Wethersfield campuses, with people involved with databases that have crimes with drugs and medicines, and planting evidences, and identity thefts and frauds, putting kids to fake natures of ties to each other, exploiting how there's a short time they're in schools together, and exploiting how it's a long time both ways to keep how simultaneous is from being used, where value, where how the system of logic in the mind actually works. I'm not a doctor. So I caught them with delusions, faking conversations with me about legal cases. There are a number of people with the name Brendan Leahy, and there are a number of women in their family also involved with a whole bunch of people on my street with their fact treatment nature predicate acts and uses of that. They made roles with women fighting with each other, threatening to kill each other on my street per the Wethersfield Police. And people, that woman reportedly moved. So Hartford Hospital has roles with houses in Wethersfield, with police forms and military that are also ones that are intercities involved with Dean, like there's a Dean Keys involved with a guy from a family member of the Kuwaiti military, involved with a Dean Alford with intercity people, intercities, and Eric Burgess is involved with a family member of a Dean Alford, a Dean Judd too. I never had a response to the confessions of them, which were also all at once because they were trying to hide. I didn't know them yet. I still don't even know. I don't even know what he looks like. The Dean Judd's son, and there's a detective Shamsi Ali involved with various intercities doctors and involved with their family members and his family members involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, identity thefts and frauds, and his physical delusions, falsified police reports, roles, switching and forging names on and off campuses, and on and off other locations, and on and off the New Britain Superior Court, remote uses of black, white, per your guys' language, formal and such, female judges. So they have remote uses of the female sensibilities of judges and male judges with that New Britain Superior Court since I was a kid. They have men and women my age that have been involved with identity theft, fraud, clicks since I was a kid. Then they try to film themselves years later to hide their sequence. Just they attach me to fake locations with other people. Why don't you get mad at those other people? In other words, I'll be mad about act. I don't keep. I don't have any of these. You guys communicate that way too. So in other words, the Brendan Leahy and his father of Brendan Leahy is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also by Rick Seal and Faglione, involved with drugs, medicines, crimes on Covington Street with kids, and on and off Central Connecticut State University with kids through time intercities. That's in New Britain. This is from Wethersfield, and I only know him with. They had Rick Seal and Faglione lie from another classroom to girls behind my back, and they had them come up to me one time and ask me like the next year, and then the next year and like it started from the mother of a Tim O'Brien, of Andrew O'Brien, and the father then with the intelligence community. They had something to do with a Rick Sam Faglione and his family. There's a Mark Sam Faglione, I don't know his sister's name, with a house on Hangdog Lane. And there are spots on Hangdog Lane. People I don't even know the names of. There's also a Dan Bonapane, who they also use to fabricate evidences. Identity theft, fraud, slander method. People don't realize that because they're as victim predators, used as victims, reactions. Predators where they are quality of fact, cheapy nature, they can't defend themselves and without valuing what they heard through the intelligence community that is criminally foreign influenced as those ones that they hear it through. So these are roles with the overt criminal enterprises with the areas. A bunch of people, the departments at Central Connecticut State University are individually grouped and together how recorded being and having been used criminally, foreign influence, and delusions wrought simultaneously intercities. This is from off campuses, relevant to how computers work, for example, with the locations and the value of them being temporary, positive or not, and relative to the sequence, which is relevant to the value of what is simultaneous. The same way English works, the same way the mind works. The computers have to mimic this. All exceptions, the exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. So the people who know the most knowledge are getting over on life's correlation nature. For example, as how I would take a counter position for those who would not be honest about the significance of the first part of the Old Testament, where it says all you have to understand is right to hear, where the science is sharing identity. I'm paraphrasing. That's it. See, you guys put physical delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence, fact, cheap nature qualities and aspects, and identity treatments per uses of identity ground locations, all in collusion. Everyone speaking through everything, little punk cowards. When someone tells you to respond to a sequence shift and interbranch switching and forging names, hurting the kids, because you guys are stuck with the police forms and with the courts criminally involved with you, and with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones different with the court with them and differentially, but increasingly kept needing to hide the same sequence shift, fine act of progressive lies. Uses of words like bullying for a premise is a fake premise, as sequence shift roles, planting evidences at campuses with kids. That's what's actually recorded. So it was reported that it might have been faked because they were also faking their passions and emotions against each other and against others. So they had something to do with other countries. Like there are a whole bunch of people who went to a Taekwondo place who colluded what is actually recorded with stacking fake things into databases on my campus. And there's a guy that Joe DeMar, one of the Wethersfield police, involved with the former director of the F.B.I. and Hartford police forms, criminally involved leading up to a 2006 district court case, and since with the daughter of John LeConte and with people associated with Thaddeus Grabowski and with the neighbors of Dominic Lapriata. So people involved with convicted pension thefts, like bookmakers and sharks, other kinds of federal criminals also involved with identity theft frauds. And hearsay used for evidence racketeering coupled with that at locations because they've been criminally preventing mandated law at courts while pretending to be for mandated law simultaneously, while simultaneously preventing equality of fact, nature, and writing to do this, while simultaneously they've been putting fake exceptions, switching officers' names, forging names into databases. So I ask you, Trinity College and Megyn Kelly, they reported they have Trinity College and because Trinity College has this Joshua Stryker involved with who's been spreading lies about me through little girls that were part of, some of their friends were child abused, and they, by multiple boyfriends at the same time, lied about me behind my back to them. And like now there's a while they don't like that or what, they're self-valuing what those people told them about me. Their self-valuing roles of wire crime acts, missing mail crimes. Their roles are all along the Church Street in Old Wethersfield, in the corner of Church Street and Main Street. Right? Draw one line right to the witch trial place and one line right to the front door of where George Washington had to sleep in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. He had to counter-extort that still entrenched in the North and in the South with slavery. He had to leave that here entrenched. Not one has wrenched. He had to make them fight his fact, cheap nature. Had to make them fight, pretending they were going to be about unity as a theater, and they had to have an excuse. And so they had to rely upon the one given them by the counter-extortionists, our actual founders, the ones who had to counter-extort the other founders. So you guys have pain, pretend passions, emotions. You guys are all like little bullied kids when you're speaking as adults because of the relevance of where and how bullying is being used for identity thefts and frauds. What is actually recorded over the phones at the schools is being replaced by fabricated audio and video transcripts. They even use crime methods of fabricating fake emails, planting fake evidences with a letter too, with emails too, or a fake letter physical at Trinity College with a Hugh Ogden. So some people on my street were also confessed, recorded, involved with the Joshua. I never saw Joshua Stryker on my street in my life. And So I don't know the woman's name, but there were a whole bunch of people tied to Heather Hansen involved with predicate acts at Trinity College and CCSU leading up to a 2006 district court case, as people that are also involved from Connecticut leading up to the Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center roles with people with behavior crimes, identity theft, fraud roles, and roles with falsified police reports that are relevant. Also, because there are more then and now with the principal child abusers campus, and and his name was brought up. The name Bean was brought up by one of the people involved with the Spada family, and a Bob Chase brought up the name Phil Cololo. Bob Chase is one of the ones involved with whiting forensics, involved with wire crimes, identity thefts and frauds of little kids, sexual crimes with their patients and criminals that are also fact cheating nature oriented. They've been planting evidences together since before they got caught. They've been criminally foreign influence uses of grounds and of their physical delusions. They also have physical delusions. I also witnessed the people at Whiting Forensics, how they have methods relative to where and how they've been torturing people that did not deserve it, and where and how there are exceptions to that, they're also in demonstration of the same thing. So you don't have, and they're lying about their motivations too. So in other words, there are proofs that he was making up the lie about him not being allowed to go into the prison. One of our politicians, because he has to lie about his motivations, because his actual motivations are recorded. They can't afford the value of sequence true to be reported. They have roles with former Governor Malloy. Former Governor Malloy, please get me his response for the switching names, forging names, people involved with child sex offender campus. I called the school. You can't call the school because they replaced what's actually recorded. So instead of extending the damages to the other kids and trying to lock them into save the ones that are who are, they don't even need to save themselves. Just give up with it's going to trace back to former director of the FBI, like with this Subby Bajerio, but he was involved with courts with crimes with the victims of crimes, in collusion with the perpetrators of the crimes, and because they're against other people that they criminally forced to be arrested. Not for the motivations they pretend either. So we have the whole bunch of families associated with Hartford Hospital, and especially with the Institute of Living and other Hartford campuses involved with police forms and military ones that are and the interbranch family members that have been using identity ground locations to hide their life progressions in the actually recorded natures relevant to where and how each age of fact cheating nature has actually present hyper evidential means to answer the questions before us. See, but we have this worse than being and having been obfuscated. So we have mandated law, prevented, and the people that are doing that need to simultaneously pretend other. So they use the words like bullying. They pretend to be against bullying while they are forcing it. So the people who answer the phones for Fox Connecticut News and for MSNBC and for CNN and for Connecticut News and their investigators, their roles with the ground level FBI, CIA, military police, their family members, the locations next to them, criminally foreign influence, their roles with the parks, uses of the parks. It's identity theft, fraud, slanders. You have they pick kids that are smaller than others to start fights with others, try to start fights with other kids. As the ones criminally foreign influence with overt criminal enterprises kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts at locations and in cases and on campuses. This is what it's actually recorded. How they kept propagated the people from Wethersfield into branch. They go into courts jobs. They go into policing jobs. go into fire department jobs, go into private jobs, how kept criminally foreign influence information rolls with database information juxtaposed tied to it. That was told that, and here it is in the database, so it's true. No. In other words, that's what they're doing, stacking fact things, but that's only one part of it, even though those parts are individually grouped together, bound. As the corruption we know that existent that way because they had slavery, still entrenched, per the breaching method, still entrenched, per that still blamed on other things other than themselves. Other ways still entrenched. So New York City is in a trap, a torture slash slavery slash torture slash identity theft slash fraud slash slander method, which is syntactical slander method, because there is a hyperconjunction to our syntax value as nature. That before the one, not the one with these abridged, these systems other than nature's system where they're making value treatments other than how it wants us to speak about value. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing and or too late. So here is where courage to counter fake leadership. So people who have to pretend to do other, they say, oh, we're going to stand up for justice no matter how powerful the person is. They don't care about that. They're only defending the roles with remote uses of lawyers too. They make time treatment simultaneously too fast, too slow with the courts, sickly distinctly from them though. And not just the state's attorneys and attorney general, district attorneys. They came through criminally foreign influence and breaching method propagated, tactically delusions wrought, victim predator had replaced. How when someone says slavery was natural or wouldn't be there, it had replaced where and how it is only natural as criminal insidiousness. Rather than say that, they blame on other things, others themselves, purposely. Wow. On some levels tied to where and how from off campuses, the investigators affect, and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, and insidiousness up to opinions A through Z, as styles. They need to pretend other. Kept needing to hide the same from off campuses, needing to hide the same sequences, find active progressive lies, identity theft, fraud, slander rules. It's not complicated. And we want to hold on to looking at it that way. Otherwise, you start fighting about, as in collusion with it, with your fact treatment nature, the person who wants to try that style, because you guys are preventing the acts from being reported. So to be able to counter the police corruption, you have to counter the overt criminal enterprises and private ones in the courts recorded how kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts together, how with physical delusions together, and with doctors. I'm not a doctor, I'm going to delineate the delusions from their criminally foreign influence premises, their criminally foreign influence identity ground location uses. All kind of tricks, pretend fake things in databases, and just including on a mass scale, demonstrably, what they do again, they did against me. They make people they pretend people told on things who didn't even tell on things. Specifically trying to tell on things that they know they were involved with, but they're telling on it wrong. Specifically to get away with, in other words, they pretend people make conspiracy theories when they simply tried to report WFSB attached me to fake words. And I called a Trantolo and Trantolo lawyers to help me with that. The lady says, oh, I don't understand. Could you please explain? Well, they attached me to fake words. That in a story. When I called up a school of a principal, that was brought up to me by confessions of confessions of someone involved with drugs and other child abuses. and they pretended I sent emails that were fake. And the lady said she told the Trantolo I made a conspiracy theory about the government. I found out that Trantolo and that Connecticut news media has roles with government and retired and standing. And next to their locations, they have roles with people when I was a kid that were fabricating. They were doing crimes, and they were as the victims in collusion with worse crimes with the criminals, and in collusion with it and with the courts, using it to attach me and those people and other people to fake ties to each other, fake natures of ties to each other, and to further roles with uses of sequence shift self-value. So the intelligence community is kept individually grouped and together as the branches of government all accept their nature tied to them, as identities of jobs, as identities of locations, individually grouped into them and together themselves. Everyone at that location kept needing to hide the same secrets that finite progressive as styles of lying relative to where and how truth was is needed by the Constitution unabridged. Where and how they get away with that and got away with it is where and how they've been replacing the short words, at each age of campus simultaneously, sickly, distinctly, because there's connections between it and uses of it. So people from Aiello's kitchen and from Aiello's barbershop there next to Buckley High School recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed through time to evolve with spots next to Trinity College with federal crimes, identity theft, fraud, falsified police reports, roles, planting evidences on Facebook with a former Mayor Gold and with people on my street involved with federal crimes with children and with guns. All exceptions, exception, nature, demonstration, same thing. And with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with doctors of little kids, and with the intelligence community where they watch them since they're little, per themselves, and per how those confessions in little short windows when you first meet them. In other words, so I never saw Joe DeMauro. Every once in a while, he would make confessions. And then they were pretending that because I was in his, they made him in my middle school class. Not on the middle school campus, on the Pearl of Wethersfield. I forgot the name of the school. That's what they call it, the Pearl of Wethersfield. Charles Wright, I believe that was the name of the school. There's no other schools in Wethersfield. That's the one we went to. For the Celestine, so they put my neighbor, Ray Colola, had been recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed before he moved in. Tim O'Brien, his brother, Andrew O'Brien, in a different grade. I never saw him around the campus ever, Andrew O'Brien. Tim O'Brien, I saw him like one time. And, I avoided because they were trying to, they were involved with like identity theft fraud. So I knew it, I sensed it. They're trying to what I mean? Also because of the off-campus confessions and demonstrations of how the executive branch is differentially criminally foreign influenced and self-valued roles and uses of that, where and how they know little kids could use things like where and how our nature, where it's honest when we're young. We want to speak about how we have strength now and simultaneously the Native American rights and the ground for them, let alone for ourselves. I mean, and for ourselves, let alone for them. Increasingly, because their rights are constantly, by the breaching method, increasingly forsaken, and Black rights are constantly by the breaching method constantly forsaken. And where and how we actually have actually means we have simultaneously. That's how you can measure it. Now, here's what everyone misses: how we didn't figure that out and use that which is simple, hyper evidential. So everyone else, even though we're American citizens, we're still like that. We're still that system abridged, forced on them. And that means, in other words, and it was forced on the names of the countries that were forcing it, that were surface named, was forcing it. So what was forced were fact-keeping nature qualities and aspects that once entertained, being having been forced. In other words, while it's being entertained, nature is going to demonstrate negative value in its progressions, acts, and natures of that being having been forced. Those nature demonstrating that as being having been employed effectively, it was used to make everyone blame other things, others, ourselves, when countering the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures as fact-keeping nature. Not countering it exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needed. And then to have defended the nature of the law and increasingly incapable of having its words in defense through defenses of such abridged, only capable of being. So New York City has something to do also with the 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, with the kids who grew up as roles that became involved with this wire crime method with the principal child abusers campus. So these names are in my mouth because they brought them up, and they put themselves in the news pretending I'm bringing up their names for reasons other than they bring up them. Everyone speaks through others. That became relevant because you have little fakes, like a Delafair family has roles with people who were lying about my father being involved with criminal things when I was a kid, and then was proven. It was a whole bunch of other countries and things like the FBI was involved with corruption with other countries. He never told me that, but I found that is recorded true. Plus, look, when you discern it, when people make treatments of black and white, there is what is hyper evidential recorded there. There are real answers and revelations here. It's, for example, there is a non-integrity of the law while it is simultaneously pretended integrity of the law. One of the ways it gets away with it, got away with it. Oh, well, we're trying to put with simultaneously. They're saying, well, that's debatable. It's not debatable. The only way they could debate it, knock away, but by preventing us putting up what is simultaneous. So, quote, the election lie, unquote, is being and having been drafted as a phrase to used against American citizens that are Democrats and some of our Republicans, whatever. In other words, because they have sequence shift cover, they have styles, add locations, areas, and states where manifest identities of immunities from prosecution are only defending that as victim predators. They can't defend their logic and afford used or heard the logic that uses that which is hyper evidential. It shows that, and where the Democrats and the Republicans, and all exceptions, are in collusion as arrays, in a shell game, as styles in another shell game, offensively affront to the quality of fact-keeping nature actually needed at all locations, areas, and states. Bullying, pretend to be against bullying, you're pretending that you can't, that locations can't be kept in order, that there is not a way to stop what's really going on. Oh, but then if we do that, We have to do a hard action. If we do the hard action, just keep doing the action. In other words, if someone's being bullied, you should stop like that. They should be able to say it. See, but the reason they can't is because of how they involve the investigators. And the interbranch kept needing to hide what they did in cases already, what is actually recorded, how they were kept needing to hide that from which is actually recorded, from need to hide from and hurt correlation nature, increasingly valuing correlation nature having been hurt at each age of fact treatment nature. So there's a pseudo sophistication at the campuses involved criminally. So Trinity College is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people involved with at Central Connecticut State University and at Trinity College with predicate acts, with name switching and forging, with Facebook pages used too, with the courts and the police forms and the FBI have been denying exceptions, where how they didn't have the right to use Facebook for rape threats, for switching names, as in collusion with their predicate acts, with the court switching and forging names, roles, fabricating police reports and databases through time, as the roles with clicks that do crime methods, where everyone's forced to speak through others. People pretend passions and emotions, and then they use the crime method of lying about the passions and emotions in response to it, against little kids and little boys and against little girls, sickly distinctly. They lie about their motivations, uses of their kids to it, because they're coached to it, influenced through only capable of it, because they painted themselves in corners thinking. How could they think? They came through sick campuses with everyone lying to them, the people at New Britain Superior Court. So Rick C.M. Faglione will tell you he was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, influenced, having been, I didn't know all their names. There's a former Mr. Neville, who was my 8th grade English teacher. He's involved with federal crimes with an O'Brien family and with a Cololo family. That was also brought up by the confessions of the Wethersfield police, switching, forging names on off the Wethersfield town offices through time, and with the Wethersfield Police Department. And these are people also at Hartford Hospital involved with car dealerships, and with their family members, with their doctors, with their roles with their patients and criminals, and with the ownerships of the car dealerships, using their kids also with their patients. They need to hide live progressions because they actually recorded uses of themselves and of other people's names, and good and bad uses of them in collusion. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, identity treatment simultaneously are what we're speaking about when we speak about New York City. Overtly is easy to discern here. It's like using, like my college biology teacher taught us at Central Connecticut State, taught us that he would pick out, he chose a tomato because it's transparent. It's easier to observe under a microscope how the cells connect. It was easier to discern how all identity ground locations originally instilled had been set up by a breaching method that was entrenched here since before our founding parents were born. A criminal and insidiousness delivery system method that has natures of wrongdoers, natures as criminal and insidiousness, natures as identity. And identity is a nature. When I refer to it as a nature, I'm referring to the part of identity that is a relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. And there are 3 bound distinct semi-natures of positive. For example, the order of the finite, the order of what is active, the order of what is progressive simultaneously has value here, while it has value yet to come, and the value of what has been that is not here but is still distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously in order of value with the order of the finite, but it's too finite. And there's, thank you. So no one's watching. Vaccines. So in other words, Megyn Kelly Please, I hope someone could show Megyn Kelly the end of this, because the people involved with the grammar schools have been using crime methods, little tricks that use corners, like perception, things that people would use like for military training or police training and things like that. But they're using it for fact crimes, the data reception racketeering method, worse than war crimes. Evidence reception racketeering, worse than war crimes. Identity reception method, worse than war crimes. So we need an identity, no matter what color they are, that could have a quality of fact treatment nature that would not deny the significance of the value of the truth, that and how it is hyper evidential, or is evidential that and how right when people make fact treatments by black and white, it shows that there is a pseudo sophistication juxtaposed with it as a criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature qualities and aspects to it, required by the logic of people individually grouping together to get away with blaming on other things other than themselves. For example, that which such logic is reliant upon, to pretend that New York, we don't have to stop everything, not just because of a pandemic, because we have a pandemic and simultaneously people aren't free. How could we speak about liberty? How could we have people pretend they could speak about liberty? I was just saying, how could they have liberty if they're going to be forced to be jabbed with a vaccine? And multi-front, they've been jabbing people with worse than vaccines, and they've been lying about their motivations for it. I could show you how they are kept using to hide the same sequence shifts, active, progressive lies with their patients and criminals since before they got caught. Boxing is taught. So with Tim O'Brien attached me to fake words and fake natures of ties to him on campus and off campus, distinctly and non-distinctly. I had nothing to do with him. I never bullied him. He was a little baby. One time I did one slide tackle with a soccer ball. I didn't even get hurt. Little coward punks. Then we have these people with gut badges and guns. Andrew O'Brien, respond for the principal child abusers campus. Your family members are involved with this. Per the guys at Sandy Hook, Newtown, too. There was also Wethersfield Police with the name O'Neill, involved with F.B.I. and CIA and state police, other police forms, and military police switching and forging names with the courts. So please get me a response. I asked for the Fox News judges. Now they're both retired, or whatever they're doing. They're lying. They're using their Facebook. They're lying to them. And they're lying about what the law says regarding that. They're leaving out exception nature. You have a whole bunch of juxtaposed natures of child abuses. And these are also simultaneously roles with ones with elderly homes. Disgusting setup. The hospitals too. Since before, we're in the path of the suburbs are disgusting. Tactically denatured roles with that torture and slavery method against our founding parents, let alone the people hurt most by it. And the Native Americans first. And that's sustained then and now. Sickly, distinctly prevented, means to fathom, means to afford, how to fix. The tactically denatured identity ground relation and the value nature system employed by the breaching method and pretending other. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, if you try to go on their Facebook pages and reports actually recorded child abuse acts, their sources will lie to them. We have the intelligence community that never really had integrity. So they have to hide lie progressions from where and how each person of correlation nature really has means to answer questions that have been the same old, lies and delusions in place of what, like criminal insidiousness, is what slavery is and rolls with it, not natural. The only way it's natural slavery or rolls with it is as criminal insidiousness. Rather than teach that They blame it on other things other than themselves. They tell little kids to blame it on prejudice or racism, which is part of the cultivation of counter crimes that in other words, in New York City, that's it's every city across America. They have replaced that which our founders left us to liberate, to free, but which is the short words and use what means to speak, free speech and uses of what is hyper evidential. But we have this offensively debated by people pretending passions and emotions at locations, areas, and states. Originally, still they got away with it, but the hit game among us are being abused by those. What is? I don't know what the hit game is. Oh, do you mean the boxing? Boxing? I don't know how it is. I don't know what the hit game is. But they have been attaching everyone. It's a method that is sickly distinctly against every single person, and it uses reactions or non-reactions, and it's using the databases. But where and how that is the outcome /S. The breaching method knew that they would have to hide that by self-valuing collusions, what was already at all locations, the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts, which are also fact-cheap nature-oriented ones. Natures like criminal insidiousness natures, wrongdoers. These are criminal organized crime phrases, but these are also worse than war crimes. And so we need readings of statutes, revealed over the, military agreements. We see them with Russian and Ukraine treatments, which are simultaneously treatments of weapons treatments, which are simultaneously treatments of sciences individually grouped together, like law, ethics. No ethics has been on the other side of the bombs here or there. No, in other words, when people use words like black, that was applied by the breaching method. They still are measuring and maintaining little kids, blaming other things, others themselves, because there are adults associated with those kids, their own kids with the schools, ones that are mental health care. They're attaching other little kids in their own to fake. They're doing little phenomena, but between the social interactions of the kids, they're making confessions and to the sensibilities of people about their role. In other words, blaming other things, others themselves, where and how they have roles with all kinds of natures of federal crimes and criminals. This is before they get caught. In other words, we've never had locations, areas, and states that weren't criminally foreign influence. They were as victims, but as victim predators. And if in other words, they won't let us have a quality of fact, cheap nature, that will be able to counter the causes of it, because then we could trace it. In other words, in the actual acts. So in other words, Megyn Kelly says we should call up the schools when we see something wrong. The schools, if you call the schools and you catch them with something doing, because they do a whole bunch of bad things wrong. We know this through time. We need to discontinue the logic of that they pretend is adult or mature. They even have the word mature involved with the uses of they have a Claw family involved with people with various police forms family, and they've been using words like mature per the rules with identity thefts and frauds of people on off Trinity College and on off Central Connecticut State University. I don't know if they ever went to those campuses, but people at those campuses attached me to fake words and natures that ties to themselves and to others. And they had roles with some untimely deaths, one on Trinity College, and with the people that were also involved with one on my street, with families that answered phones with the Weathersfield police through time. Also as families involved with families in the World Trade Center attack, also as victims. God forbid. I swear to God, in other words, I love them. I have to use your name.
I have to say bad things about them because they won't give me someone to respond for them. For the courts that attach me to fake audio and video, and like the other neighbors of these people involved with it, which I don't know all the names of them. Some of them have the name Fienza. There's an Enzo Fienza. He's one of the ones I got to confirm he was being used to plant evidences intercities with people associated with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News, and like through buildings around them that are being involved also with people on off the state judicial branch offices and all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it, which goes by the state judicial branch offices. And that little street right there next to it has the Fienza family and some girl diagonally across from there associated with Joe DeMauro. So they put a Joe DeMauro, a Heather Hansen, and a Ray Colello in a middle school class with me, in a summer school class with a Mr. Neville. And he's got family members involved with the intelligence community. It has something to do all along Route 3 and places in Cromwell associated with military, foreign and domestic, involved with identity thefts and frauds, uses of mayors' family members, and their roles with uses of Facebook, for example, where they use criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, where they leave out and left out exceptions, exception nature. So they've been using that as their roles with federal crimes and cases, which are actually relevant to the actual causes of the streams going into courts every day, like New York City. You hear all the stuff with New York City. So we have to do something for the children. And we have to have mandated law followed. So they replaced. So they had my town's police chief, a police chief Cintron, a whole bunch of officers recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. When he got involved with this, then he started making officers forge and switch names. They have a Leahy family and have others, like they have some judge. They have a Judge Kelly involved with drugs and medicine crimes, sexual crimes with them, uses of Facebook, identity thefts, frauds, planting evidences with child sex offenders, a principal child abuser campus. It's people that had something to do with selling cigarette boxes that make phone calls back in the day, and had something to do with the transition from ACA to RICO. They were doing that after it had already been proven that people that were pretending my father had something to do with such stuff. In other words, the FBI and the CIA had been criminally involved with military families, some Confederate flag KKK themed families that work for prisons, on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices. There are houses next to the state prison offices that are involved with families with teachers I had. Two of them were involved with some police farms and medical families with drugs and medicines crimes. And then when they had to hide live progressions, they had to make identity thefts and frauds rules. Putting fake things in databases, fake ties to me, fake natures of ties to me and to other people around me. So this is how they start fights between people. This is where they create needs for violence, because they also have violence involved. Weathersfield police have some crimes with guns and with bug spray and smoke, also with the fire department's intercities involved. There's a fire department near West Farms Mall, and there was a fire department near Trinity College, which the one near West Farms Mall is also right next to a child campus, which is one of the ones involved with Hartford courts. Family members involved with crimes with drugs and identity crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, evidence planting against kids and their family members with the people that live next to the schools, because of their roles with uses of people with their narratives, like their fact treatments like bullying and addiction, where they're using those as premises with physical delusions and with criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature qualities and aspects that are in collusion with other people doing the same thing for other reasons. So they made arrays of opinions A through Z regarding what put color so stupidly entertained, while everyone are pretending their sophistication other. While everyone's blaming other things, others, ourselves, when correctly, even when correctly, wrongly. And rather than have them show them how they're doing it correct, but we have to just never fix this because this is wrong. We don't fix that because we have people just preventing offensively mandated law. The wire crime methods involve the Wethersfield police switching and replacing what is actually recorded with fabricated audio and video at the police station. These are the same ones involved on and off the principal sex offenders campus with other people then and now involved through time. They knew he was going to be involved with that campus years ago. People associated with the corner of Walker Hill and Knott Street with Sandra Spada and Alessandra Spada and her sister, that my neighbor, well, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with him with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, and with people as the people involved with the families that work on campuses that have also roles with that, with investigators typing fake things in databases through time. And this is recorded. So they're pretending to be against what they are for. People who are pretending to be about democracy. More important, people are pretending that voting is the most important right. Not if you can't get the law followed and both sides are fake. That's what CT must break. That's what the North and South, both sides are fake. Our founding parents still had to hide the roles. Until we have that understood and told, they still have to, there's still the complete remote possession of all locations, areas, and states. Not mandated law, not the Constitution, just some sick fake punks simultaneously pretending to be against dictatorship and then pretending to be against, all you can do is vote. Get down. You have to fix the fake rules and have mandated law followed. So switching and forging names is a lot of time impositions. They have been using COVID and excuses tied to medical locations they know they've been wasting the space of. They know they've been wasting the resources of it. And Anthony Agnew is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed on Facebook involved with Social Security crimes and other natures of federal crimes with various natures of overt gangs, drugs like acid and other kinds of drugs through time with a Leahy family. I don't know him. They pretended other by putting him in a math class. I mean, I had nothing to do with him. I've never rude to him. Fake! CT must break. Oh, excuse me, I didn't use it, so I started anybody. No one's hearing this anymore. So, thank you, people. Please make sure. Megyn Kelly, they've been replacing what's actually recorded because they have the family members of police forms on the campuses. Everyone's been speaking through other. They can't speak for the law when it comes down to it. They speak fake. So then they have to pretend other. And it has to do with they have that whole bunch of different countries involved with Trinity College and with CCSU, with the people that are involved with them criminally. Has something to do with Taekwondo places in some Kung Fu place or some place on Broad Street are involved with an Aiello family and with a Demaro family and with Eric Oliveri and with a Matt Olson and Eric Olson involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. I never had a class with them. I saw him 1 second on middle school. Never saw him off campus. Never saw him around. I don't even know where they hung out. There was a Mr. Abruzzi from my grammar school class who took collusion with people with attaching me and others to fake ties to each other, fake natures of ties to each other. And then when we're having normal communications and relations with each other, they would interrupt that. Offensively, and then switch people. They would do stupid things like that. I didn't know all their names. I found out a Leahy family and his kids. They have the same name too. People with the same names have been involved interstates through time. So there are families with Rhode Island that used my name and try to pretend they knew me by using an exception tied to this Enzo Fianza people on off the state judicial branch offices in Wethersfield, Connecticut. are involved with people with the spots in westerly Rhode Island, like Misquamicut. And they've been involved with identity theft, like a Michelle. I don't know her father. These are men and women with the intelligence community. These are also men and women where they have the arrays of types of people, types of difference that are used for other than what difference is really about, and collusion. And then they're going to defend themselves because they've been pretending since they were little that what people have been told them pretend the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and people's unusual behavior means to their perception. You know, so in other words, someone, if I heard this, especially this part, if I heard this part, I would say, I would type, give Anthony a name. Give him a name of who disbelieves what he says. Because they prevented me writing interbranch and they made fake exceptions. They have a whole bunch of ways they could use those locations, criminally foreign influence, having been. No one's watching. They've just been fabricating audio and video. The whole groups of them that go in there, they're lying about their what really they were involved with when they saw other people, to say that they know them behind their back. Because I know that I saw them and they told me about them. And they told them what's told them about me. I don't know their names. At the Britain Superior Court, the ones from my camp, my street, tied to my street, intercities. And I don't know all their names, but we can find the names because they have the patients and criminals of men and women in the Leahy family that are doctors that attached me to fake conversation with them about legal cases too. Ones where they are involved with the federal criminals in it from other cases. They were involved with those other cases more further criminally too. And former director of the FBI is one of their co-defendants. These are the fake cases they talked to me about, pretend I spoke with them about. And that was the first time I went there. And I was only there for 3 days. And I was one that they kept me overnight in the triage. They force you for mental evaluation. Then they pretend passions and emotions with people online, where they're controlling who gets heard and who doesn't, relative to where and how they have employed the interbranch locations, attaching people to fake words about the World Trade Center. They make people complain about things as groups because they've been attaching the individuals involved. They attach my mother to fake words and me to fake words with her, and others to fake words with me and others to fake words with her. I knew they were going to have to do that. I caught them doing that. But I caught them affecting me needing to do that when they wouldn't allow me to have a calm means to defend myself from little fake punk cowards. I'm not going to beat up some little kids. I mean, men, I'm not going to beat up some little men smaller than me. And the big ones. You know, if you want, they do it in the context where I'll get arrested and make it look like I had a words with them when I never had a word and never had anything to do with Chuck Hasper. He was involved with spreading slanders against me, specifically as his roles with various natures of federal crimes, from behind my back with a former Mayor Debbie Gold's daughter, and other roles with some religious themed, identity theft, frauds, fake motivations roles. The religious spots are criminally involved too for that. There's a guy with the name Darren involved also with the Jewish community centers and the rest of the religious spots involved. There's a place on so there are places in Wethersfield further involved with elections, locations, criminally foreign influence involved, as also the ones further involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts, fact, cheating nature oriented roles with it, uses of the location that way. While they're pretending that's not that's different though. It's not different. You know, those countries are here shared with the campuses. What really were the motivations for it? That was effectively used to maintain self-value, to bridge Constitution roles, still torturing people to shut up about what they catch the fake branches and the fake police departments involved with. they're involved with the overt criminal enterprise. Of course, we have to counter the overt criminal enterprises and private ones because we have the interbranch involved with predicate acts, but then worse than that. Even uses of the identity, even the body dumping spots tied to the identity theft frauds. So there were some military police have roles with the, like some Justin Kavinskas. I don't even think he went to my grammar school, which is what Highcrest School, which is the one with the principal child abuser. And the principal, that there was a guy involved with the abuse of the daughter of that. I don't know if sexually, but he was reported sexually involved with her by Rick Cianfaglione with his confessions tied to it off campus after he graduated. And with there was a Leahy, there was a Brendan Leahy involved. They were spreading time when they play with the sensibilities of how the little boys and the little girls hearing communications of others, and where how they're replacing what's actually recorded. We have men and women that are pretending people are immature, and they're pretending that we're using their names from the past with physical delusions and criminally foreign influence, because if they put that on paper, as they're going to have to do, because the Britain Superior Court has roles fabricating audio and video with the news, and with their roles through time, with each age of class, sickly distinctly in this method. It's a vertical, horizontal oriented, but it's exploiting that further as all kinds of collusions, plural, at other locations. So, and Tom Perone and some girl pretended to know me, and pretended their passions with as one of the people that did that in life. Right when I showed up, and they didn't even know me before that, relying how I came to that spot years ago, and that has something to do with Town Line Drive, and the house is near me, and F.B.I. involved with it. There's an Ian also recorded on Trinity on Twitter and other ways involved with people with the F.B.I., former director of the F.B.I., and people with like interstates F.B.I. that are also involved with Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut, with the names. I don't know all the names involved. I know the name Kalala was brought up by the Wethersfield Police confessions about, and with switching names and how they use the women as fake integrity, sickly distinctly from the men, while they're pretending their integrity anyway. Where and how they get away with it too. That's where they rely upon the identity thefts and frauds. That's where they rely upon and self-value, criminally foreign influence hierarchies. That's where and how and why the real legitimate nature of the people, when they're trying to be policed properly, when they're coming up, they can't say anything, not for legitimate reasons. So this is interstate too. There's some people in Massachusetts with a Rick Cianfaglione who they involved with identity thefts and frauds against me, intercities through time, on off Covington Street and spots next to that when I was a kid. When he was making confessions about something, the middle school teacher and O'Brien family, Tim O'Brien's mother did some kind of fake things, had communications with all kinds of people from Wethersfield. She was planting evidences and controlling the sensibilities of people. So they have the corners of the streets on Hangdog Lane, on Highcrest Street, further involved with O'Brien family, had something to do with the confessions and with the police departments and the news media and their uses of names like Mogman or I believe I don't know. It was one of those names they had in one of the stories. I'll get that story. It's in the news media. I'm gonna go get the link to it. Let me see. Just look up Wethersfield child abuser principal, upskirt principal, NBC, Connecticut News, CBS, and Fox News. See, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed uses of their story, treatments there to hide what I caught them doing with the principal sex offender and others involved then and now. Also with the policing of the stores. And Facebook, they have KNERR involved with New Britain Superior Court Facebook page. And then they have a whole bunch of extra Facebook pages when I started talking about it, they obfuscate it. Involved with the Britain Superior Court with the principal sex offenders Facebook page too, with the Joshua Julian, with federal crimes, with quoting fake news from the past, where we had police forms overtly criminally foreign influenced as roles with job sites, clicks, and unions, clicks, families, and clicks and stuff like that, involved with identity thefts and frauds, criminally foreign crime methods where they use criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, like for example, where they have the right to lie about people that are that they're going against in trials or in unions and union disputes. And so they pretended that they had that they had the right to coordinate those lies with their kids and people associated with their kids on and off campuses with overt criminal enterprises, cliques, and sexual circles. Also, not even realizing it because of the extent of how they made the lies, and they do positive advantages and negative to force, trick, hurt, and persuade roles criminally foreign influence with the locations, areas, and states interbranch overt criminal enterprises, private ones already in collusion with the same styles of secret, premises, factory means or quality aspects themselves having been used remotely as their motivations. So they've been pretending about my motivations with physical delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence motivations and needs to. The Britain Superior Court, Harvard courts. Then they pretend it's personal. And for dishonestly about that, so you can't afford writing. So you can't just call them up because they keep fabricating more audio and video. And then they want to say, oh, well, he called all the time. Anytime I call, they make up more things. So they're trying to make it, a fake instance. They bring everything to a summary that's fake. So make sure they pick one name in sequence because you guys you hid this from the intelligence community associated with Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN hid this from Judge Napolitano and from Judge Joe Brown and from Janine Pirro and or with them. I want to know who disbelieves. You guys better give me a response for the Wethersfield police. Play games. They better make sure they pick one name in sequence too, because I want a response for the schools too. The rest of the schools, you don't want to do it. They have this a whole bunch of different ways tied to the Native Americans, with people involved with identity thefts or frauds against me as cop forms, with this McGee name and little kids involved with him criminally through time, people involved with the casinos and with this Joshua Stryker and people on Trinity College involved with identity theft, frauds, slanders. You little sick fake punks. His little group of people, like they would steal things from each other and then make plant evidences with courts. And people involved with Jerry McGraw and the wedding of that kid in the intelligence community that married some girl from my campus that I never had a conversation with. And I'm pretty sure she was never in class with me. Lucinda or something. So she was Justin Glavinskis. So those are people with her friends with the Timothy O'Brien involved with the racketeering with the mother of him and the father of him with the intelligence community, with Hartford Police, Wethersfield Police, and people involved with the police chiefs through time, involved with the same houses with predicate acts rolls with them, wire crime acts and methods rolls with them, action recorded nature. Yeah. So, in other words, we need to have mandated off. So please get me a name and make sure I get heard by someone.